Hey everyone. Now I know a lot of people like myself and Mega Beat Man and others have kind of, you know, said the things that we've said about the Mecha Sally arc. And hold on for a sec. Sorry about that. I was to take care of something. But I know that for years, myself and many others have given our take on the Mecha Sally arc. And we've always theorized of what could be, and we got to give shout out to a lot of the fans out there that utilize fan comics like Archie Sonic Online, Archie Sonic Restored, Archie Sonic Forever, Mobius Comics, Game Boy Sage, Glitcher. We got to give a shout out to them because because not always, but they've been finding ways, I should say, to kind of fill in certain gaps and everything. Like with Archie Sonic Forever, there's a scene where they have Tails kind of mentioned that Monkey Khan, during his encounter with Mecha Sally in the Sonic Universe story arc, I think that pitted Eggman against Snively. What Archie Sonic Forever did is they filled in a gap, answered a question that I'm sure a lot of fans were wondering about, like how can a power ring, power Sally but not give her free will, and we hear about modification and all that. So Archie Sonic Forever, they basically filled in the gap and answered that question by having Tails explain that Ken Khan, during his encounter with Sally in her mecha form, acknowledged that there was some kind of isolation because the power ring she was, running on ran low on power. Basically, it's her battery, her life force. So Monkey Khan had to give her up or anything to save her to Eggman. He had to give her up to Eggman and all that to save her because he has this supply of power rings. But even he's wondering, like, why wasn't she free? Why couldn't she do anything, to help, to prevent you taking control and all that? So Archie Sonic Forever, fills in that gap by basically having Tails mention that to the Marseille freedom fighters, that Eggman might have found a way to isolate the ring's effects. Now they do go on later on to have Sally restored and everything, have her get back into the groove of stuff and catch her up on things, and even have Amy Rose stay behind in Marseille, which is her home region, if you will, to catch up with her father, because she's not seen her father for a while, as well as the rest of her family. So they basically wrote her out of the story for a bit from their point of view. Archie Sonic Online, of course, they did their take. I've reviewed it. They've done comic dramas on it. Done really good to stay true to what the comic is about and everything, and really just stayed on course to what Ian originally possibly wanted to do with the comic, and everything. Same with Mobius Comics and Game Boy Stage. They're kind of going in similar but different directions, to where you have two different Sallys. With Game Boy Stage, they're using it as a crossover with Sly Cooper and Carmelita Fox, and called Sly Encounter. And it's basically the premise of the situation was Sally was roboticized, but it caused her to split from the roboticized body, be herself again, but get transported into Sly's world, and then later on that Sly and Carmelita got transported into Sally's world, and Sally encountered her robotic self, and so on and so forth. And in Mobius Comics, they're doing something similar but different as well. So everybody's taking a crack on it, trying to expand, where the original story left off, go in their own direction, kind of continue where it was originally meant to be, as well as fill in gaps and everything as well, and answer questions. Even Glitcher is doing it sometimes in a very dark, gruesome way. Like, there's a comic he did, or there's a comic page, a couple of comic pages he did, where he basically fills in the gap of how Sally got weaponized, and it's very gruesome in detail, if you will, because he has basically Eggman and orders Snively to melt down Sally's roboticized parts, basically burn and melt down her original body as he builds her new body and everything. So, a lot of fans basically are filling in those gaps and everything. But there's always been one question, though, fans always will have, and I think it's a question. I don't know if I've asked it before, but I'm sure others have wondered it as well. That if you take away the crossover, because we know that after 248, we were going into a crossover with 247, I think. We were going into the crossover with Mega Man. But if we take that away, we take that crossover away, you have to ask yourself, had the crossover not been a thing, and had the lawsuit with Penders not occurred, what was the next step? What was the next direction Ian Flynn was going to take us in? And give credit where credit is due. Archie Sonic Online and Archie Sonic Forever to their own extent, like I mentioned earlier, have kind of tried to fill in that gap themselves. But if we look at it from the official standpoint, what would have been the next direction? What would have been the next path? Again, take the crossover out, take the lawsuit out, that caused the reboot. What would have been the next step had things gone according to plan? What would have been the next step? Well, honestly, we don't know. And I'm going to say this with all due respect, no offense to Ian, because he's a great writer. He's a great fan himself. He came from the fandom to be where he is now. He basically came from where we are to be where he is now, so mad respect there. But you'll have to ask yourself, what would have been the next direction he would have gone in? And let me drink some Starbucks for right here to kind of water my mouth a little bit. My mouth is kind of dry. It's good. But obviously the question is, what would have been the next step? That Ian would have gone with the story. Like I say, take out the lawsuit, take out the crossover. What would have been the next step? You have to ask yourself that, because again, we don't know. As fans, we don't know. We can only speculate. And like I said, with outlets like Sonic Online, Archie Sonic Online, and Restored, as well as Archie Sonic Forever, Mobius Comics, Game Boy Stage and Glitcher, and all of them, we can only speculate, theorize, and kind of picture in our mind, exactly what the next steps would have been, and then place those speculations and ideas on paper, and and type up the script and everything based on what we feel the next direction could have been. But again, you have to wonder officially, from the official source, what would have the next step been? And again, as I was saying, I say this with all due respect, no offense to Ian, I don't think Ian even knew what the next step was going to be quite honest. I mean, he can go out and give us an idea of what he was planning with Lost Hedgehog Tales, and he was supposed to continue that, but he never did. And that kind of tells me that maybe the reason he didn't continue Lost Hedgehog Tales, which would have been filling in some gaps, giving us some answers, is because maybe he didn't know exactly what the next step was going to be either. And I know that's hard to believe, but I don't think he did. I don't think he did. I mean, I'm sure he had drafts, various drafts. Like when you write a script for a movie or a show, or even write a first draft for a novel or whatever, you have various different first drafts that you're going through, rough drafts as well, but drafts of all kind of, where you want to go with the story. And if it's a continuation, it's like a saga, it's a continuation, you have various drafts of all kinds of where you want to take the story next. And I'm sure Ian Flynn had that as well, but he couldn't decide maybe what direction he wanted to go. And he probably looked, saw the different paths he could go, but couldn't figure out what would be the best path. Like maybe he saw the opportunity that Archie Sonic Forever filled in by acknowledging that, okay, he has Sally, kind of stabilized by Silver. And now they're going to figure out how do we restore her free will? They open her back up, and then they see, oh, wait a minute, Eggman's got some kind of protection over this power ring. Let's cut through that, take that protection out, and then voila, there you go. She's back to normal. She's still robotic, but she's free again. She's on their side. And then she helps them out. Maybe that was one direction he was thinking. We don't know. Another direction could have been like what Archie Sonic Online did. Just follow through. Have her get captured. Have them escape from where the Death Egg's at. Head back to New Mobotropolis. And while they're there, maybe maybe Mecha Sally reactivates, tries to attack them and everything. But Sonic is able to, basically beat her down a little bit to the point that he almost destroys her, but not to the point to where. I'm trying to find the right words to say. Hold on, guys. Almost not to the point to where he could have destroyed her completely, blew her up and everything. but basically got her, into the roboticizer, got her restored and everything, thanks to the Krazood that they brought in, and so on. Could have that been a direction he could have gone in? We don't know. Could have, he had Silver basically use his powers to, get through the isolation, kind of power up the power ring more so than it was, to where it overrides the installation on Sally, and she gets her free will that way. We don't know. Or would Silver go back in time, take Mecha Sally with her, and locate where Sally is during the near global robotization process, find her, surprise her, say, take my hand, show her that if you don't, this is what's going to happen to you. This is because of Eggman. He's the one that's going to do this to you. And then have her teleport out of there and right over to Sonic in time, and maybe cause the Mecha Sally to, cease to exist. Kind of like a Meet the Robinsons deal, where the main character tells that robot hat, or that robotic cat, I'm never going to invent you. And that causes the robotic cat to disappear into nothingness, cease to exist. Was he planning to have Silver do that? Like, Silver goes back in time, takes the stabilized Mecha Sally back with him, finds Sally in the core of the Death Egg of the global roboticizer, tells her, hey, you need to come with me, because if not, this is what's going to happen to you, and this is going to be because of Eggman. He's going to take advantage of of your sacrifice, and everything. He's continuing to this, and again, is that how maybe you reverse the effects? We don't know. We don't know, and I don't think Ian knew, because he probably had a variety of drafts he was going through, and maybe these were different options he had. We don't know, but again, I just feel that maybe he didn't have a clue of where he wanted to go next. And again, it's not because of, and again, it's not because he had a crossover he had to do. He could have done that as his own separate entity. I think we all can agree with that. But, I think honestly, he didn't know what the next step was going to be. I mean, he did come up with a, part of a resolution, like, okay, give the Krazood to Stars. He takes it back to New Metropolis. They'll use it to help, de-roboticize Sally and everything. Okay, that's fine. But what would be the next step in the process of doing that if you take away, the crossover? If you take away the lawsuits, what would have been the next step? We don't know. We don't know what the next step would have been. But, it's like you have a story like this, and you're going on with it for almost 2 years. Most of it's very repetitive, very similar to the Metal Virus arc, and it's like you don't know exactly what your next step is going to be after being going through this for so long. You don't know what your next step is going to be once you finally let the moment that fans have been waiting for occur. It's like, okay, what's the next step? Because obviously, I don't think the next step was to go into the crossover. I don't think it really was. I think he went into the crossover not just because of the lawsuits, not because Sega and Capcom mandated it. No, not just because Archie mandated it. No, he went into the crossover, I believe, outside of all that, because he probably didn't have an idea of where to go, next with the story. He probably didn't have an idea. And I think that's why, he probably went to Sega, did the Capcom, went to Archie and said, hey, when do you want me to do the crossover? And they probably said, as soon as you can. He probably was like, hey, I can do it right now. He probably did that as a resolution. And of course, the timing probably was perfect because, again, you had the lawsuit screwing things up. So he probably figured, well, I don't know where I'm going to go next because the lawsuit's taking away a lot of the opportunities I have in these drafts. And, I could go this way and that way, but certain things are taken away. What do I do? So he probably figured the best thing to do was to go the reboot route and then just use Nicole as the Deus Ex Machina key to restore everybody's memories. Most of the Freedom, basically the Freedom Fighters, the main core Freedom Fighters memories and all that, to kind of tie in both, realities, both continuities, so that there is a connection. And I'll give him credit, that doing that did kind of keep things kind of on the same track, same continuity, if you will, so to speak. But still, I think honestly he did all that because he did not have a clue in my honest opinion, what the next step was going to be in the story. I really do. Because again, if you take away, like I mentioned earlier, you take away the lawsuit, you take away the crossover, and you have to wonder, okay, if you didn't have to deal with, if Ian and his crew didn't have to deal with all that, what would have been the next step? And we don't know. We don't know what the next step is going to be. And again, I think this is why he didn't finish doing his Lost Hedgehog tales, because I think he realized he didn't have anything else to talk about because he didn't have a plan. He didn't have a clue. It's like, okay, what's the next step? And that's why I think he went and did what he did. The timing couldn't be better, I guess, to do what he did with the crossover. Use that as a means to reboot the whole comic and start out fresh. So honestly, I know I sounded like I was all over the place here. Maybe there were some pauses. I do apologize. This is what happens when you do things unscripted and on the fly. But honestly, I think the timing was couldn't have been better for him to do the crossover and to kind of do the that would allow him to do the reboot because of the lawsuit. But still, it's like if you take that away, you take both of those things away, you have to wonder, okay, what was going to be the next step for him? When it came to the story, was he going to do what Archie Sonic Forever filled in the gaps with? Basically, acknowledge that Eggman had created some kind of isolation in Sally. Was he going to explain that and then have them get through that isolation to give her free will? Would they have flown her back to New Metropolis, before she activated and everything? Or, as they're on the way there, she does activate and tries to fight them off, but then they stabilize her to the point to where they get her into the de-roboticizing machine with the Kurzood and restore her. We don't know. Was he planning to have Silver go back in time with a stabilized Mecha Sally to the location where Sally was going to get roboticized originally, show her what was going to happen to her as a result, teleport her out of there right to Sonic, and cause the Mecha Sally of the future to, cease to be? We don't know. And then if you want to count in the crossover, you want to cross in the crossover and even the lawsuit, but mostly the crossover. Let's put in the crossover, but minus the lawsuit. The question is, what would have been the next step after that? How was he going to have Sonic go back in time and everything? Or restore the world? Was Sonic going to do what he did at the end of Sonic Genesis? Was he going to go back in time? Like he did previously, find Sally where she was, or basically not find her where she was, but basically rewind it to the point that not only does it prevent her from being shot like she was in 225 originally, but also basically prevent her from being doing what she's going to do. Maybe you have Sonic go back to, maybe, he had a plan. Did he have a plan maybe to have Sonic, if he wanted to do the crossover? Again, if we add in the crossover, did he have a plan for Sonic to restore the world and maybe go back in time to where, he goes back way before the Death Egg gets revealed and everything, kind of supplants it into his mind because of that, and makes him realize, whoa, Sally, before we do anything, that thing's got a global roboticizer. And then if she asks, well, how do you know? He can explain to her maybe because, basically being, in the situation they're in, she'd probably believe him. He could explain to her, well, it's because, I know this because of the fact that we've already been there and this is what happened. And again, knowing that, knowing what Eggman's capable of, she would probably believe him and be like, okay, so what do we do? And he says, well, and, just go from there. Again, this is all just, speculating and theorizing. And again, I know I sound like I'm all over the place, getting off track, and I do apologize, but you got to think, is that what he had planned as well? If he still continued on with the crossover, was he planning to have Sonic do something like that? Like, go back in time to the point that, the Death Egg arrives, but before they do anything, he lets Sally in on what he knows, she believes him, and everything. But was that the plan? Was that going to be the plan? We don't know. If he wanted to include the crossover, we don't know. And even if you add in the lawsuit and he still wanted to go straight forward with what he originally had planned, how is he going to get around that? Because Arctic Freedom Fighters, Ken would take, responsibility for them. Apparently, we don't know. How is he going to get around that? We don't know. You see, again, I think honestly, and I do apologize if I sound like I'm all over the place, but I do believe Ian Flynn didn't have an idea, crossover, no crossover, lawsuit, no lawsuit. I don't think he had a clue of what the next step was going to be. And I say it with all due respect to the guy. I say it with all due respect, no offense to the guy, because again, he is one of us. He is a fan, himself. So I say this with all tremendous respect for the guy, that I don't think he had an idea of what the next step was going to be. I really don't. It's like he was doing this, he was going on this journey and everything. He had an interruption here and there, and that's fine, very minor. But he was going on this journey and everything, and he was trying to make this his magnum opus. That's what he was trying to do. He was trying to make this his equivalent to the Endgame that Ken Penders did. And unfortunately, he didn't have an Endgame, so to speak, pun intended, for the story. I don't think he did. I think when he got to that point, it's like, the point that everybody was waiting for, I think what happened is he froze. He was like, okay, now what do I do? What's the next step? And he couldn't come up with an outcome. He couldn't come up with an outcome of, do they take her back to New Metropolis like they did in Archie Sonic Online? Do they, have her get restored the way she was in Archie Sonic Forever, but also have her reveal that the reason she was never given her free will is because Eggman isolated the Power Rings effects? Or did he have, or was he planning to have Silver go back in time, to where Sally was before she got roboticized, show her what was going to happen to her, and then teleport her out of there to where Sonic is on the Death Egg, and then have the Mecha Sally of that future, present, if you will, dissipate into non-existence? Was that going to be his plan? We don't know. And even if he did go through with the crossover, was he planning on Sonic, as I mentioned earlier, and again, I do apologize if I was all over the place. Sometimes when I talk about this stuff, I get carried away and I get off track. But was he planning, if he was going to do the crossover, was he planning that Sonic was going to go do what he did, very similar, if not identical, at the end of Sonic Genesis, go back in time, right before the Death Egg shows up, explain to Sally and everybody exactly what's happening, and Sally, because she knows that Eggman's capable of anything, realizes, okay, Sonic's telling the truth, I believe him, we got to find a way to deactivate that thing before I end up doing something that I'm going to regret, was he planning to do all that? We don't know. Because I think, honestly, he had no plan himself. And I say that with all due respect to the guy. But let me know what your thoughts are. Do you think Ian Flynn had a plan? Or do you think he had no plan? And do you think maybe if he had a plan, he had a variety of choices, draft-wise, of where he wanted to go? Do you think he would have gone with what Archie Sonic Online did? Do you think he would have done what Archie Sonic Forever did? Do you think he would have probably had Silver go back in time and save Sally by showing her what was going to happen to her? If she would have gone through with her, idea, teleport her out of there to Sonic and then have Mecha Sally of the future present, dissipate into non-existence. Do you think he would have done that? Or do you think if he would have gone with the crossover, that he would have had the ending of the crossover be very similar to what Sonic Genesis was, but instead of being like a few moments before Sally's robotization, Sonic goes all the way back to when the Death Egg appears, the Death Egg Mark II appears, and then he reveals to Sally, what he knows, she believes him, and then they come up with a plan from there. Do you think any of those ideas probably would have been what he would have done, or do you think maybe, again, and I say it with all due respect, no offense to the guy, he had no clue, what the next step was going to be? What are your thoughts? Let me know down below in the comment section as well as in the live chat during the premiere. Like the video, ring the bell for notifications, share the video, subscribe to the channel. Also, click on the links in the description to find my content elsewhere. You can find me on all your favorite audio and video podcast affiliates like iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Pandora, Audible from Amazon, Radio Public, Overcast. Anywhere there's a podcast available, you will find mine there as well. You can also support me at patreon.com at bwroses. I have a new video there under the $3 and $5 tier. Check that out. You can also support me with a $1 tier as a tip, to help me out there. Also, you can find me at VENMO at bwroses, odyssey.com at bwroses.5, rumble.com at bwroses, where I do have some new content up there. And it's content that I can't put here on YouTube due to copyright reasons, and also YouTube's algorithm and all that may not, accept it as being family friendly. Also, you can find me at deviantart.com at bvw1979, where I've uploaded new content there as well, very similar to what I said here. It's content that I can't share here on YouTube due to copyright and other means, other various means as well. You can also find me at inkbunny.net at bwroses, and like I said, at deviantart.com at bvw1979. You can also support me at Venmo and Cash App. Be very much appreciated if you do. And also, you can find me at twitch.tv and at kick.com. You can also find me at, and follow me at Twitter, aka x.com at bwroses, Blue Sky at bwroses, and at TikTok at bwroses. But guys, let me know what your thoughts are, if you agree with me and all that, on what I had to say. I do apologize, like I said, if I was all over the place here. That's just how I get sometimes when I talk about this. I suddenly go in one direction and another, and, I kind of get off track, but I try to stay on the same subject, that the topic is about, and everything. So I do apologize if I did that here, during this video and everything, the audio video and everything. I do apologize. But guys, give me your thoughts. Do you agree with anything I said here? Do you think he had a plan? Do you think he didn't have a plan? What are your thoughts? Love to hear your opinion on it. And until next time, I am out.